Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another Creative Sim for the Disney Saved. Today we're going to be adding in some Frozen 2 themed characters for Mount Komorebi, including some characters from the Northuldra and General Matthias that is also kind of an important character in the second Frozen movie. And I didn't originally get around to doing Frozen Townies when we were, or more specifically I should say, Frozen 2 themed Townies when I was doing Frozen videos, and that was sort of because I did get a little bit burnt out on Frozen in general, and I was really itching to move on to Mulan content. So some of the characters that just didn't make it around that time when I was sort of doing all of the other stuff are these Northuldra characters, but I was also saving their Creative Sim so that I could put it out right after their speed build video. I did previously do a speed build for a residential of the Northuldra village, and that is actually going to be a lot replacement for the Arendelle village rental, so you'll have the option of either of the two, and maybe if you want to play with these characters a little bit more, or you want the option of an additional residential for Mount Komorebi, they will suit your game a little bit better, but other than that, you will also have the option of the Arendelle village that comes as a rental. But of course, making a residential, we needed to have the characters to actually live in it. So we are starting out first with Honey Marin. We are also going to be creating her brother Ryder, and then Yelena, who is more of like the main leader of the Northuldra. And then lastly, we are going to be tackling General Matthias, who will just sort of be a townie in both versions of the save file. And he really didn't fit into his own video because there weren't a lot of other characters to kind of go along with him. I do also have to create some Arendelle staff, but because they are more general, and I have some references from the movie, but honestly, we don't have like a dedicated name for a lot of the characters. Like, they're just going to be those characters you sort of see running around the background. I did decide that I probably would just not make a video for them. I've actually done the trolls from Frozen as well, and I did those over on Twitch, but I didn't make them in a video format because I didn't think that it would translate very well. They're a little bit unrecognizable, and because of like the depiction of how they have to basically turn out in The Sims, being that I can't make them super short and they have sort of an odd skin tone, it just wasn't like my favorite interpretation that I had ever done from one character in a Disney movie to The Sims. So I decided to kind of cut that footage. But that's why the World Tour videos I think are really fun, and I always make changes later on to lots of builds. So even when you see a speed build video and it turns out a certain way, I inevitably have to go in and fix stuff or update something. And those are the kinds of things that I save for the World Tours. And that, hopefully, the Mount Komorebi World Tour maybe will be out in the next few weeks here. I got a lot of testing to do with Mount Komorebi, but I'm going to try the best that I possibly can while simultaneously working on some new Willow Creek builds that are going to be themed for the new movies that are going into Willow Creek, because we're moving Belle's Village to Henford on Bagley, so there's a lot of stuff coming up, and hopefully you guys are excited for it. Now, because these guys are townies, but in one version they will be more playable characters, I didn't set them up the way that I usually do with my main characters for the save file. Normally I'll go through and add traits and I'll give like a little description of them and really talk about them, but for townies I sort of don't do that because it's a little bit time consuming, and townies are obviously townies for a reason. They're sort of not maybe as important characters to the rest of the save file, so I can get away with just being not as detailed in their character descriptions. But Honey Marin, I do think, has one important feature at least, and that is a lot of people have been highly requesting for me to add some kind of romantic relationship between Elsa and Honey Marin. It's kind of implied in the movie in some aspects that they could be romantically interested in one another, and I definitely have seen my fair share of people that just like to pair the two characters together, and I always love a good opportunity to add something in where we can. So Honey Marin will have some romantic interest with Elsa, and then you can sort of do with that what you will. Ryder is obviously shown to be Kristoff's friend, so that'll be exciting. I always love adding those little bit of relationship roles between townies and the characters that are more like main characters for the world. I tried to make sure that they're all established correctly, so that even though these characters are more made to like wander and they're on plate households, it will still have like proper friendships, proper relationships, hopefully the things that you would think that the characters would have naturally with one another. Something that I've actually implemented somewhat recently in the Forgotten Hollow version of the Disney save is the idea of movie clubs. So clubs in The Sims, I think, are actually really, really unique. I think Get Together is one of the better expansion packs that The Sims ever got. Windenburg is a beautiful world, and I think the idea of clubs is very fun and unique. But when I was previously doing some work on the save file and adding the likes and dislikes that come with Snowy Escape, actually, I decided that I would implement a new idea to the Disney save called movie clubs. So basically, this is a very different type of club than the ones that are more designed to group characters together based on like common things amongst them. So for example, we have the Disney Princesses Club, we have the Disney Villains, we have Gaston's Fangirl Society. Those are actual functioning clubs. They have entry things that you need to get in. They all have very specific roles within the save file of things that they're supposed to be doing. But I wanted a way for you to possibly be able to start a club gathering or gather all of the same characters together from a movie or a set of movies that you would want in a similar space. Be it for a party, be it for whatever gameplay purpose that you might need that for, but also for me personally, because sometimes I need to round up all of the Princess and the Frog characters, and it's a little bit tough to do so when some of them are Townies and some of them are not. So I've started implementing movie clubs, and basically the clubs are just named after the movie that they are based on. The description for the club is like a quick, brief 2-sentence description of whatever the movie is, and there's really no requirements to get in, but they are private clubs and they are just grouping all of the characters together. So for right now in the save file, before I have even added in Mount Komorebi and Snowy Escape to the save, I have clubs like Princess and the Frog, 101 Dalmatians, Hercules, movies that have multiple characters, especially if we had some Townies from a movie, and you want to be able to call them all in at one time. Now, of course, those are limited to 8 slots, which is a little bit disappointing because there will inevitably be times where we have more than 8 characters for movies and we can't fit them all, which in one aspect, it does defeat a little bit of the purpose. But I have found that I don't really have that issue. Usually I cap out right around 5 or 6 Sims. There are going to be exceptions to this, of course, but I think most of them have fit so far. I think the only one that hasn't fit was Beauty and the Beast, and that one's only going to get worse once we add some of the other characters that I haven't even made yet, like Belle and Beast and Lumiere and all of those characters to come. So we might have to do even like 2 clubs for Beauty and the Beast potentially, and they will also probably change depending on priority. So for right now, for example, the Hercules club that is in the save has Hades, Pain and Panic, and then the 3 fates that are Townies for Forgotten Hollow. But later on, I'm going to be adding Meg, Phil, Hercules, and maybe some other characters, and it might cap out. So they go based on priority, in my opinion. You have the main character, kind of the secondary character, the villain for the movie, and so on. And when I finish Mount Komorebi, I'm going to be able to implement that as well. So we're going to be able to add a Frozen club, a Frozen 2 club perhaps, and then I'll add all of the Townies and things. We have characters like Hans and the Duke of Weaselton, and I think we have, like the Trolls, and now we have these guys to add, and General Matthias. So there are quite a few Frozen characters, and I just wanted to point out that that was something that has been added to newer versions of the save and that I plan to continue with across the board to make it a little bit easier for your gameplay. Now, for the character creation process of the Northuldra, they are based on the Sami people. So I took a little bit of reference and interest in that just so that I could use for character creation and honestly for their residential as well. But you'll notice, as with a lot of things for Snowy Escape, and basically a lot of the characters that we ended up doing in this world, I felt like for some reason the Star Wars clothing just fit a lot better. And it's a good thing and a bad thing because on one hand, a lot of the characters are wearing clothing that are very similar. So when you have all these Mount Komorebi characters together, they all have a similar vibe, which really does make sense. You know, if you're living in like a portion of the world, you have a certain style, you'll probably see like a certain way of dressing repeatedly, but I didn't want to use the same exact Star Wars clothing over and over. Don't get me wrong, there is a sprinkle here of Snowy Escape stuff, but with Mulan, I used a ton of Star Wars, and then I used a ton of Star Wars again with my Frozen characters, and now even for these Townies and things like that, I know that I did it for the trolls, and I've gone ahead and used it again for these guys, but I've done a really great job, I feel, to the best of my ability at making sure that I'm not being super repetitive in the colors specifically. So the Northuldra wear a lot of tan, light colors, creams, whites, a little bit of blue here and there, but when they were standing next to Anna and Elsa in the movie, and Anna and Elsa have a lot of these like autumn tones on, they sort of contrast one another. So I wanted to keep them pretty much cohesively in something from Star Wars, similar color pattern, and fortunately we do have that more like Rey style dress from the Star Wars pack that fit really well on Honey Marin and was probably one of the better cuts of dress that we had, that kind of goes almost to the knees, but it still has that very handmade sort of vibe, and it has the slits on the sides, and then it's layered as well, which with Mount Komorebi being in the cold and we have these lots that are endlessly winter, you really want to have the characters wearing clothing that reflects that. So even though a lot of maybe other things could have been available, I really wanted these characters to be dressed in layered type of clothing, and fortunately the Star Wars pack really does offer that. I actually really enjoy a lot of the clothing options from Star Wars. I think that if I didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't always notice that it comes from Star Wars, because it doesn't really fit into anything, so it can get used for so many different things. Like, it fits really well for Anna and Elsa, but it also fits really well for my Northuldra, and it fits really well for Mulan. It just isn't one that you can like completely put in a box, which means that we can use it for lots of different characters. And I knew, again, I wanted to have them all dressed pretty similarly, so Honey Marin and Yelena were going to get the same outfit because of the fact that they are dressed almost identical in the movie. And then the men walking around the village in the Northuldra scenes are definitely dressed slightly different, but we wanted it to have the same vibe, so we went with a lot of Star Wars clothing. Unfortunately, the hats and those sort of like fur-lined hats and those things that are very significant to their character design, but they're just like too odd for it to be a part of The Sims, we weren't able to use that. So we do the best we can with like beanies and things such as that. You'll notice for Honey Marin, I didn't give her a hat because there really wasn't one that fit her super well, and the beanie didn't look super great with the hairstyle that we had chosen for her. Lucky for me though, Yelena does not wear a hat, so we were able to match her hair a little bit better. And I found a hair that I have not gotten a chance to use yet. I believe it's from Cats and Dogs, and it was really close. It even has the little braid off to one side that on the same side of her face as well, which is really nice. She is an Elder Sim. General Mateus is also an Elder Sim, and they will be separate households. So these three will be a unplayed household in the first version of the save, and then the General will be a separate household as a Townie. And like I said before, General Mateus will actually serve as the Townie in both versions of the save file. He doesn't technically have a residential, although you can move him in Arendelle Castle if you do so wish. I found Honey Marin and Ryder to be extremely easy to make, and then Yelena maybe not as easy. And you'll notice that the background and cast changes, and I also definitely have some glitching going on here. And that's because these characters were actually created literally months apart. I made Ryder and Honey Marin probably 3 or 4 months ago, one day on Twitch when I was bored and not ready to move on to the next build. I decided to go into Create a Sim and just work on some Frozen characters, and I never got around to working on Yelena, so she didn't get made until literally last night. And last night we got the Cottage Living update where all my mods broke, but I sort of didn't realize until I was already recording, and I didn't think it was too troublesome, so the background color changed from green to blue for our last 2 characters here, but we also have some different glitches going on with my mouse, unfortunately, throughout the video, and I hope it's not too annoying, but I didn't really think it was too much of a problem. And then lastly, we have the General / Lieutenant, depending on which portion of the movie you are referencing him from. And I was just excited to create like I always think about these characters that are Townies in the aspect of like what type of a household is this going to be? Because if you have all these unplayed households listed, and I picture people like scrolling through them and having maybe like the option of, oh, I want some new characters to add into this household, or like what type of people are roaming around the worlds. I like to have some variety. So I like to have big families, small families, ones with cats and dogs and children, and single sims as well. I think that those households are really important. And one type of household that I don't really do a lot of as far as like Townies is single elder sims. So this one is kind of cool. Especially when I think about the other Townies that we have for this world, like we have Periwinkle. She's a single, I think, young adult spellcaster, and then we have the Yeti that's just kind of a weird one that I actually have to edit a little bit, but that one is its own thing entirely. We have a ton of Townies for Mount Komorebi, and General Mateus is definitely sort of a different one. I would love to take some pictures of him as well and maybe add them to the Arendelle Castle to give some history of it and just kind of insert him into the castle as well, because obviously I think that you would probably see pictures of him around the castle being such an important character for the Arendelle army and whatnot. And this is pretty much going to be it for Frozen. I do not see myself coming back to these movies at all. I think we have pretty extensively tackled it, from the Arendelle Castle to Latte Go to Oaken's Trading Post. Oaken and his family are all going to be Townies as well. And now that we've done the Arendelle Village and the Northuldra Village and the Trolls and a troll-themed park, I think we're pretty much good, and I'm very happy with how everything turned out. This is definitely one of those movies that got a lot more, and that's sort of happens sometimes when we do the Disney save. Like, some movies just get more content. Princess and the Frog got a ton of builds, a ton of characters. Beauty and the Beast is another one that's going to get a ton of stuff. And I don't know what else we can expect to add to that list, but probably Disney princess movies. I think we'll get a fair bit out of those. Maybe some of the older ones, not as much. Like, I can come up with a couple of things here and there for like Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, but as we get further into the lifetime of Disney princesses, I can see those ones getting tackled pretty extensively. Even Mulan, I think in this case, there are 3 Mulan-themed, 4 Mulan-themed lots for this world, and lots of characters to kind of correspond with that. But I am happy to say this is my last Mount Komorebi video in the form of a Create-A-Sim or a speed build. The last one you're going to see, or the next one you're going to see rather, will be a tour video of Mount Komorebi. I don't know if that'll actually be out next. Probably not, because that means that I have the whole thing ready and up for download, and I just don't think that's going to be the case. So you can probably expect to see some speed builds from Willow Creek coming out very soon. We're going to tackle some Dumbo. That is like my next thing that I'm going into. I have some lots to replace. If you don't know why, you can go check out the previous video where I talk a lot about why we're going to be going back to Willow Creek to do some different lots and builds there. But we won't be there for long before we move into Henford on Bagley stuff, so stay tuned for all of that good stuff coming down the way, and I hope that you enjoyed. Let me know which of the characters from Frozen 2 that we've created today is your favorite in the comment section down below. If you would like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by hitting the link in my description box down below, or the one at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Hit that little bell icon below to turn on post notifications so you can get updated every single time I post, and I will talk to you all in the next one.